Hey there, it's Xander, and welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward. Today, I'm going to be talking with Uzette Salazar, and we're doing Epic Unexpected, another chapter in uh, talking about sibling loss and stuff. Uzette, thank you so much for coming on, and maybe just share a little about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Xander. Thank you for having me on. It's such a delight to be here with you. We've been talking for a long time over the years, so it's great to be able to communicate with you and talk about your journey and what you're trying to do. A little background on my information is that I grew up in San Francisco, Noe Valley. I was raised by my father and two brothers. My mom was still in the picture, but my mom was ill throughout my life, and so she was doing her own thing in Los Angeles. So my dad brought us to San Francisco and raised us. We were a very tight-knit family, us three kids. It was us three against the world. And we covered for each other anytime we got in trouble, because if one got in trouble, everyone was getting in trouble.
Yeah.
So we kept things from my dad because no one wanted to get in trouble. And that's how we formed our bond since we were little kids. So again, I was very tight with my brothers. I was the only girl, the youngest one. Each brother was we were a year apart from each other. So we were very close.
Yeah.
As far as just, I don't know, any other background than that is that, should we talk about how he passed away?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get to that, but more importantly, what I want to say is Uzette is a multimedia superstar. She's been on local San Francisco radio for more years than she and I will talk about.
Dating
And
myself. Yeah, I think it's over 30 years that I've been on radio or television.
yeah.
And my dad was a broadcaster, so was my grandfather.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, so I always knew that that's what I wanted to do growing up, and went to school for it, went to City College, and then went to State, did a bunch of 5 different internships or so around the Bay Area. And, I'm very grateful because people helped me along the way. So that's why when people ask me for help for things, I'm right there. What can I do for you? What do you need? Who can I
Yeah.
call up for you? Who can I email for you to get you into that door? So I've always been just very grateful for people along my road, not just broadcasting, but just through my life. I've had not hands out, but hands up, there for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Um, mhm.
certainly that kind of support is essential when, as you and I unfortunately both know, when you lose a sibling. So why don't you, if you don't mind, take a moment and talk about your brother, who he was, and what happened.
My brother, Tom, is his name. I was 18, he was 19. My brother, Anthony, was 20, and he was already away in college in Santa Barbara. So it was just at the time, my brother and myself, my brother, Tom. And because we were all so close knit, we hung around the same people.
Yeah.
We were neighborhood people. We hung around people from around the block, kids at the park. We all just hung around together. And it was December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah.
And this was 35 years ago. That morning, Tom had told me he was going to purchase a motorcycle.
Oh no.
I begged him not to.
Yeah.
Please, please don't. He was the kind of guy that was cool with the ladies, and he was just the most carefree person, which bothered me. Even though I was the younger person, it bothered me that he wasn't thinking twice about what he was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, for a year or so, he had a car that he bought, some hoopty he bought for like $400 that he parked around the corner from our house that my dad had no idea about. He got a tattoo, a Grim Reaper tattoo that he had for a couple years that my dad didn't know anything about. He would, wear a robe or cover up when he got out of the shower. And he was not the Grim Reaper. It was just some stupid thing he did with this idiot friend. And so his decisions, I was very fearful, and I felt all the time I had to look out for him.
Yeah.
So that day he told me he was going to do that. I asked him who he was going to buy the motorcycle for. And it was this guy down the street who had a big family of his own, sisters and brothers. I went down to that guy's house and pleaded with him to not sell that to my brother. Mm-hmm. Just please do not sell that motorcycle to my brother. He, laughed at me like a little girl, even though he was only a couple years older than me. I went home and I was watching some news, and the Pearl Harbor footage start coming up, and It wasn't the History Channel because that wasn't around just yet, but it was something along those lines, some kind of documentary. And I remember sitting at the very edge of the coffee table, glued to it, just praying to God, thanking God that my brothers were not at war. And thank God that they were not killed at war. I mean, all these thoughts were going through my head, just thank God I have my brothers.
Right.
And that day, so he goes off to do his thing. I go off to do, I think I was cleaning some guy's house that day. Yeah. And after I went and cleaned this guy's house, I went back to the side piece that I was seeing at the time.
A Yuji's doozy.
Well, I've known him since I was like 11. So he was there for me when I needed someone. Right. So we would hook up occasionally. But I went to his house, and we were hanging out in his bedroom, and our other friends, Tom was going to go meet them at the pizza place. We were all going to come back and hang out. So I'm in the bedroom with this boy, and which is weird because I didn't even know my dad had that boy's number. And the boy at that time lived with his grandmother. So the grandmother comes knocking on the bedroom door, and it's my father. And, I'm like, whoa.
Right.
And he tells me that my brother has been hit by a truck while riding some motorcycle 2 blocks from where I was. Again, we hung out in the same neighborhood. I could not believe, I sat there, and we went to the General Hospital in San Francisco, and he was pronounced dead. And, I remember, I don't know, they wheeled him out perhaps so we could say goodbye. Mm-hmm. But it was, I think, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I did read the death report, but mostly it was head trauma.
Right.
But he lacerated, all along his front parts.
Sure.
And so they wheeled him out, and he's bald, and he's a guy, like, he had hair like me, like lots of it. And so he's bald, just like you. And they have his hair in a bag, in a Ziploc bag. Oh. And here I'm thinking, the only thing I could do is grab that hair and hold on to it.
Yeah.
And I remember just sinking to the ground. That was like the first time in my life. It's only happened a few times, but I remember just literally sinking to the ground. And so that was what happened that night. And I remember I also did one other thing. I believe they had his wallet in another bag. I grabbed the wallet because I knew that he was a donor. Mm-hmm. But at that time, I didn't want anyone taking any piece of him.
Yeah.
So I grabbed his wallet, and to this day, I look at it almost every single morning because it's in my underwear drawer. Yeah. And so it's so selfish when I look back, like, oh, shoot, there could have been some organs he could have donated. But at that time, I wanted what I had left of him is all I wanted.
Yeah. So, I get that. I get that.
So that was that night, and Um, my mom and dad were broken. I mean, I was broken. That defines my life very much. That's really, I don't know, what's bigger than a milestone, something huge. But that's where I started remembering stuff. So it was everything became after Tom died.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's
Mhm.
what happened. And I can still go past that same spot. They ended up putting a stop sign there because that was not the first accident
Sure.
that had occurred there. Um, there's something kind of stupid and funny, but my aunt who lives in LA, um, not too much longer, maybe a couple years after Tom died, she went to a the woman called herself a bruja,
Okay.
witch. So
A
I don't know.
medium, a psychic, whatever, right?
Yeah, whatever they're called. And by the way, we never found the person. This
Uh,
is why she went to the psychic person,
right.
because we never found. All we knew that it was a orange or red truck, possibly with a rack. There was investigations that went on. My dad had friends in the police department, but no one ever found anything.
Yeah.
And there was times where I would go through the neighborhood looking for a red truck and just looking around, and just someone has to know something. Someone knows something.
Right.
And I mean, there were so many times where I wanted to go to unsolved mysteries, go to all these things that someone had to tell me to let it go. But anyway, the bruja told my aunts, I guess she asked, where is this person? And they said that the person killed themselves
uh,
after this happened. Um, you know, I still can't say that I totally forgive this person. I don't know if I wish they were dead or alive. If they're alive, I hope they think about it every single day. But I don't know. Sometimes forgiveness comes rough for me. And even though it's been 35 years, there are some days where I go, yes, I forgive them. There are other days I go, no freaking way. No. Hope you suffer.
well, no one wants to mess with the wrong Mexican, right?
Especially a family of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of Tom's story.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, thank you so much for sharing. Interesting sort of things is that my sister Lucy was killed on December 9th. So,
Oh wow.
and so you and I just had the angelversaries, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and I'm just interested because I'm 24, 20. Let's see how uh, 20 uh, 24 years into my loss. You're 34 years into yours. Um, just a question: when December 7th comes, do you find as the years go on that it some years are easier than others, or is that day always challenging for you?
That day is always very challenging. And today is or this angelversary is the first time I didn't, since social media has been around, that I did not post anything.
Right.
Usually I would post a picture or something
Sure.
like that. And this year I didn't want to read people saying they're sorry. I mean, it's not like I didn't want the pity. I just didn't want it, and I wanted to keep it to myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely use that. And that absolutely is. Yeah, I always say that most days I talk about Lucy, but there are days where I don't want to talk about Lucy. And like just Sunday night, my girlfriend we were watching this CNN show was talking about like the mass shootings and the survivors and stuff. And then they were going to go to Chicago, and I had to stop watching because my sister was murdered in Chicago. And I was just like, normally I'm okay, but I was like, right now I can't do that.
Too
And
close to home.
yeah, like it just sort of watching them interview the parents and people who, you know, survived some of these shootings and stuff. And I'm like, I can identify with all of that pain. And I was kind of in that space where I'm like, I don't want that right now.
Right.
It's too much. So
And
um
Christmas in general, it's just, I just don't feel an appreciation for it.
sure, sure. I do get that.
What
And
what happened to your sister?
She was a second year law student at John Marshall Law School. She was in her apartment, and a maintenance worker in her building who had spent 8 of the prior 10 years in Joliet State Prison and stuff. It's as far as we can put together. Um, he let himself into her apartment just to do some petty theft. And normally she wouldn't have been there, but it was exam period and she was there. They surprised each other. He ended up strangling her, jumping out her second floor window or fourth floor window onto second floor roof where he broke his ankle. So the police had him right away. There was never any question about who did it. And 10 days later, he hung himself in the Cook County prison. So
Wow.
um, you were talking about the forgiveness and stuff like that, and I was just sort of reflecting and thought, uh, I don't I don't forgive him for killing my sister. However, I think there's sort of karmic payback that he died the same way that he killed my sister. So sort of I can let go and say,
Interesting. Yeah.
you know, and in working with lots of other sibling survivors, you know, I mean, there are obviously lots and lots of us out there. Um, there was just a study that, or an article I saw yesterday actually that came out and was talking about how the unacknowledged grief of sibling survivors is, you know, really detrimental. And I don't know your experience. I'm interested to hear about after Tom died. Um, did people ask how you were, or were people asking how your mom and dad were all the time?
Um, well, right after it happened, my dad let me go to a neighbor's house,
Hmm.
a lady neighbor. And the boy I was telling you about that I was hanging out with,
Yeah.
he let the boy stay with me for like a week
Oh, nice.
at that house because there was so many family members at our home
Right.
that he didn't want me dealing with that.
Right.
So I'm kind of one of those people, and I think I always have been, that I sort of keep, what do they call it? Keep your cards close to you.
Yeah. Yeah. You play them close. Keep your cards close to your chest, as it were.
Yeah. So I'm kind of one of those people already. So I mean, I suppose people were asking, but you know, I'm sure I said fine. I'm fine. You know, really? Was I fine? Of course not.
Yeah.
Probably in, you know, with that boy, I would cry with him or just cry in my own bedroom. I think my parents were trying to be strong for me
Yeah.
and my brother. I mean, I would cry with my other brother. Yeah.
Definitely. No, I mean, because you were an adult child, right? I mean, you were
18, yeah.
18, right? I was 28, but still, you know, not a little kid, but obviously still a child. And it's I know for me, was really hard to see my parents so devastated. And there's this,
Broken.
I've I talk about this a lot, how with people who are like, let's say 15, 16 or older, you get into there's this vicious circle where you see your dad sad and you're like, I want to take his pain because it kills me to see him in pain. And he sees that you're sad. He wants to take your pain because, well, that's what parents do. So everyone's trying to take care of everyone else and no one's taking care of themselves. And therefore no one, like everyone's just spinning around in this circle
Yeah.
and stuff. And I think it is, I know my experience was lots of people asked how my parents were, and I get that question. However,
What about me?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, your sibling relationships, pardon me, the longest one you'll have in your life.
Mm.
Your, from what it sounds like, you were really tight with Tom, and you're still tight with your brother, Anthony, and um, for better for worse, I think our siblings are some of our best friends. They know us better than we know ourselves. They know all of our secrets, and they're the person we can talk to. And all of a sudden, when that person is gone, you're kind of like, now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people aren't generally acknowledging our loss and the significance of our loss, right? I think that has, as you said, it shaped your life. Everything is since Tom's death, certainly the work I'm doing, here I am talking to you, the work I'm doing on behalf of other sibling survivors, trying to raise that awareness is a direct, that comes because of Lucy, because I found that there really weren't any resources for us. And I was like, I need to do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wrote my book, and I've got another book coming out, which is for parents to understand their living child's grief. And, it's, and every day there are little things that remind me, and I'm sure there are things that remind you of Tom. And it may be, you smell something and it reminds you of Tom. It could be,
Yeah, smells are really important. And there were so many times when even the hair, the way his hair smelled, or the
yeah,
way he would walk, it just, yeah, little things I go, whoa.
right. And you'll find, I find that not every day, but probably now, at least once a month, there's something little that comes along that reminds me of Lucy. And some
Mhm.
days it's takes the wind right out of my sails. You're like, oh my God. Could be a song. Smell is a big thing,
Yeah.
whether it's, perfume. Sometimes you're just walking down the street and maybe you see someone who sort of is walking the way Tom walked, and
Mhm.
then all of a sudden you kind of like, huh?
I did have this helped me a lot, is that I did have a dream about him.
Uh-huh.
Maybe, I don't even know, let's say a couple months after he died. We were playing in the playground down the street. I remember I was jumping rope, playing with some girls, and I look over and he's standing right there. And of course I stopped jumping rope. I try to run to him, and the closer I run to him, the farther he gets back and says, I can't.
Yeah.
And then, oh my God, he wanted to let me know that he was okay. That was it. So that helped.
Yeah. Of course it does. And look, I had right after um, my dad called and told me that Lucy had been murdered, and I, was living in my apartment, so I got my car to drive to my parents' house. And I had sort of a similar thing where I was thinking about, I figured this is the worst thing, and my parents are going to be catatonic in the corner, so I'm going to have to take care of everything. Because my
Mhm.
younger sister was in Florida, lived in Florida at the time, so I'm like, she won't be up for at least a day, and I've got to take care of everything. Luckily, my parents were stronger than I gave them credit for. Funny that children underestimating the strength of their parents, huh? Anyway. And but I got thinking about, like, in lieu of flowers, what do we do, right? And as I mean, remember this as clearly as day, and I have to say this was Lucy just niggling me to say, and I'm like, oh, we'll have donations go to Jane Doe, which is a organization in Boston that helps abused and battered women.
Mm.
Now, I knew nothing of this organization except for the fact that, like, the year before, my sister had done a fundraising walk, and I had, I had I'd given her money, sponsored her. That was all I knew about it. But it was one of those things that as I'm driving, I'm like, oh, okay, yep, click, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I get in, I tell my parents, look, in lieu of flowers, let's have donations go to Jane Doe.
Hmm.
And we knew, I mean, seriously, I'm in the phone book looking up to go. I don't even know, like, a phone number. I don't know where they are,
The phone book.
any of that, right? And Jane Doe ended up getting like $30,000 in donations
Wow.
for Lucy, and they built like a resource library from that money for
Oh,
women,
that's incredible.
which is awesome. But that whole thing is like, why on earth would I? It's one thing if you're like, this person was really, really involved with ASPCA or something, so it's a
Hmm.
logical, like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I can say that that's sort of like, I'm okay, and here's where I want you to do it. Can
Struck
only,
by lightning.
yeah, seriously, I can only say that was something from the other side, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe in that stuff for sure. And
And
even if it's not so, well, let me believe it if it helps.
exactly, exactly. And I'm sure that your dream um, gave you some, whether it's real or not, it's real for you,
Mhm.
and I'm not in any way questioning that, Uzette. But
Yeah.
like, it helped you to be as okay as you can be, because you're
Maybe
like,
just
oh,
like process it a little bit
yeah,
more, you know.
yeah, just sort of that circle of, okay, he's okay, okay. I can know that he's okay. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. Um, in the last 34 years, are there things that you've done kind of for and or because of Tom? Like, whether it's supporting anything or,
Um, not not necessarily because I
okay,
support all kinds of organizations
I know you
for
do.
one reason, for one reason or another. I support so many organizations. But honestly, no, I don't think anything really that I could relate that it was for Tom. I mean, he was a 19-year-old kid. It wasn't like he was making moves in the world. He was barely, I had graduated high school. We started going to college classes together. So
Right.
there really wasn't anything particular
Okay.
like that.
Okay, and look, and that's fine. Sometimes people all of a sudden are like, "Oh, I do this, or
Yeah.
I do that." Do you ever have those moments where you, I know I do, where I wonder, what would Lucy be doing, and do
Hmm.
you kind of wonder, what would Tom be doing?
Yeah. I always worried about him. Like I said, he wasn't the best decision maker. I always assumed that I would be taking care of him. I don't know what he was going to be doing, but I knew that I was going to be taking care of him.
Yeah.
which I really didn't have a problem with, oddly enough. He liked to do some drawing.
Uh-huh.
I know that he, like any boy at that age, wants to be a rock star. So he did a little drums.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I think he was also interested in broadcasting, like I was.
Sure.
So perhaps something like that. But I really don't know. He was just so carefree and just didn't give a crap about much. So hopefully that would have changed. And he
Right.
would have done well during classes and gone on to do something really great.
Well, I'm sure he did. And if nothing else, he'd still be your big brother.
Right. What do you think Lucy would be doing?
Well, I mean,
Well, she would be a lawyer, right?
yeah, she was, it's sort of, life is when you look back, sometimes you go, wow, that was really fortuitous and stuff. So at the time that Lucy was killed, my dad was a judge in Massachusetts.
Oh,
And
wow.
so in early November of 1996, I was on a trip with my parents to Hong Kong, and we were coming back. And when we got back to the U.S., we were in L.A. And my dad was looking in the paper, and American Airlines was having this Thanksgiving special where you could fly from Boston to Chicago round trip for $88. You just had to fly back by Friday, the last flight on Friday. So you could fly Thursday and then you had to come back Friday. And
Mm-hmm.
my parents, just on a whim, said, let's go have Thanksgiving lunch with Lucy. So they got on a plane, they went and had lunch with Lucy, and my dad asked her, he said, look, now, you're almost done your first semester of your second year, what type of law do you think you want to practice? And she said, I'm really interested in either being a assistant DA or perhaps a public defender. I kind of like, I'm kind of liking that. She
Mm-hmm.
said, but the problem with that is neither one of those jobs kind of pays a lot. And it's kind of hard when you get out of college, out of law school, because you have the law school debt
Right.
and you have a job that really isn't paying a whole lot of
Mhm.
money.
It's
Uh,
admirable, but dear, it's not going to pay the bills.
right. And my dad had seen that in his years on the bench of very dedicated, really very brilliant assistant DAs and public defenders who, after a couple of years, had to go into the private sector because they just couldn't continue to only get paid, like $40,000 a year.
Right.
They had bills to pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was 10 days before Lucy was killed. So I think she would have started off there. Where she would have gone from there is anyone's, honestly, is my guess. I would think maybe she'd become she was very dramatic. So perhaps she'd be sort of the, uh, uh, you know, uh, big, everyone knows this person as a public defender, but is taking big high profile cases and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and what we did is we started a foundation in her name, and we started a scholarship that we give to a graduating attorney from John Marshall Law School, who's going into public service to
Mhm.
help support their decision to do this
Wow, that's
great
so
work.
great.
Yeah. So to date, we've given 25 scholarships away. And
Uh-huh.
I have to say, it's been really, really rewarding to do good things in Lucy's memory. So much nicer to celebrate her life and what
Mhm.
it is that she wanted to do. And the difference it's made in these people's lives. That money is used to help pay down their law school debt.
Yeah,
And we
they're living
have,
through Lucy.
huh?
They're living through Lucy.
They are, absolutely. And we have, when every year, I mean, we did do it this year because of COVID, but we go to Chicago and have a dinner with all the former um,
Aw.
Sprague scholars, and it's always a lot of fun to find out, the what people are doing and how, that has helped them in their career and what they want to do. And yeah, it's a great way to keep Lucy alive and stuff. So
Wow, that's so fantastic. I love that.
yeah, no, it definitely is. I always say it's so much nicer to focus on doing good things in
Hmm.
our siblings' memory than just focusing on that dot that is the end of their life.
Hmm.
It's not to forget it, but it's also to say that's not the only thing.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you had 18 years with Tom, right? There's more to his life than he bought a motorcycle and got hit.
Yeah.
He had long flowing rock star hair and
Oh my gosh, so funny.
and well, Uzette, I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing. I know it's always challenging to talk about these things, but I think
It's
it's so
pretty amazing to how fresh it still is, even after all these years.
absolutely,
Like
absolutely.
you had opened up the conversation with um it doesn't get any easier. Time may go by, but I don't think it got easier.
I think I don't know that it gets easier. I think we just acquire more coping skills
Hmm.
and we figure out I talk about in my book how, like, when we first experience loss, it's kind of like uh, a gigantic life raft. We all have, I think, cubbies in our life, things that we can think about and go, oh, there's that nice memory, the day I got my license, and you can pull it out and play with it and then put it back in, right? But then
Yeah.
big things that when we pull it out, it
It
takes
comes
over.
crashing down.
It takes everything, it just takes over everything.
Yeah.
But then I think as time goes on, we find a way that we can pull out those memories and get them back into the cubby a little easier. It's not like it just takes over, but there are the days where absolutely it will be the life raft all over again, and it just derails you. And I often say it's not necessarily the big things, like for you, December 7th, never an easy day, but you kind of know that it's coming. You've got experience. You kind of know
Yeah.
the things you do or don't want to do. And so you're sort of braced for it, but it's
Hmm.
more of those unexpected reminders that
Yeah.
come along. Maybe again, you're walking down the street and you see someone whose their gait is the same as Tom, and it just triggers you, or a smell or a song or
Hmm.
something. And I like to say to people, use that unexpected memory as a opportunity to be happy that you got to remember them today, because you didn't know that you were going to get that opportunity. It's kind of the, let's try and make some lemonade out of this thing. It's not always easy, and it's not
Yeah.
always a good glass of lemonade, but it is like, hey, I had this opportunity. And I know, look, I know there are songs that come on the radio or movies. And Lucy really loved the theater. She majored in theater, and one of her favorite plays was Chicago. And when the movie came out, I went and
Hmm.
saw the movie by myself. And in the first minute and a half, there's Catherine Zeta-Jones singing All That Jazz, and I'm bawling my eyes in the dark. And I
Everybody's
thought,
like,
holy
what's
God,
up
how am I going to make it through this movie?
with that?
But I
Yeah.
was,
The song Sister Christian, because
yeah.
Night Ranger was really
Yeah.
popular during that time. And him and his little friends would love to think that they knew how to play it. So, so that song gets me a little, choked up.
Sure.
Maybe a couple Jerry Rafferty songs also that get me a little choked up sometimes.
Sure.
I
Sure.
forgot I had this bracelet, and I was looking for a bracelet to wear today because I'm wearing silver earrings, and I have this silver button right here.
Yeah.
And so I pulled it out, Xander, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about it. So the bracelet says, anything is possible.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, oh, I need to wear this more often. It's just a skinny little bracelet. I think someone from, I think one of the sales girls from Alice Radio gave it to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I need to wear that more often.
Yeah.
Get me
Absolutely.
in a better place. Some days are good for me and some days are not.
Absolutely. And look, we all have those days, and it's all about, I think, the choice we make. Use that every day. We get to choose whether we want to talk about. If I choose whether I want to talk about Lucy or not, and you get to choose whether you want to talk about Tom or not. And as you said at the beginning, we've known each other for quite a few years. If at least initially, just I was a voice on the phone, but because I would call in all the time. But it is so important that we utilize that choice to say, I am choosing today to talk about this. I know you would at one point mention that you lost your brother. I sent you an email or something, and I know that initially you were kind of like, no, I'm not talking about that. And I was like, okay, I get that, totally get that, because it is really, it's hard. But I also think, since so often we don't know where all these other sibling survivors are, so we don't have people who understand, and there's that conversation that you get to have where someone else understands.
Right.
And it doesn't just have to be about loss. It could be about someone else in broadcasting, and there's stuff that you could start to talk to them, and they'll totally get what you're talking about, and you don't have to go and explain everything. And and it's a much more satisfying conversation. And I find when I talk to siblings, some sibling survivors have gone 20 years without actually getting to talk about their experience and their loss and what it's been like for them and what they remember. And I always say, look, remember the good and the bad about these people. They weren't saints. We tend to canonize people. Oh my God, they were. And I'm like, look, I'm sure that Tom had times where he was a total shit to you. Okay. I know Lucy was a shit to me. That's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we laugh. I mean, we laugh. We tell stories about them. I mean, do you still talk to your brother and tell stories back and forth about, Tom and stuff, or do you guys not really talk about him much?
We will talk. I say over the past year, there has not been any talk because there's too much pressure everywhere else because of COVID.
Absolutely.
So, but over the years, yes, we would talk. And this year we didn't even text each other.
Yeah.
His wife texted me and said something about he's in a bad mood today or grumpy mood or something like that. And I said, well, don't forget what today is. And I said, just give him a little extra love today.
Yeah.
And so she remembered. She's very good at dates. She knew what day it was. So she just gave him extra love. Personally, I don't know that my husband even remembers what it is. He's not very good at dates at all. But
he knows when NASCAR starts.
But so I I don't believe I said anything to him about it. You might be the first person that I've talked to, the only person other than that text with my sister-in-law that I've talked about it this time around.
Okay. Well, I'm very honored that you would talk to me about it and everyone else that we just called.
Yeah, so it's it always puts a damper on Christmas, but then the New Year's starting and we're all here, and I just hope that things are going to be better for everyone. It's been a really rough year. I mean, I think I've had a rough year, but then I look at other people, they've had tougher times. So I always look at other people and just go, man, someone else got it worse than me. So
Absolutely.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what I have.
Absolutely. It's certainly been a challenging year on so many fronts,
Mm-hmm.
I love my house, but I'm getting tired of, of being inside.
Well, this year, 2021, is really going to be the greatest. I just
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Uzette, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and I know it may not have been easy, but I appreciate you sharing about Tom, and you are such a fantastic person. I will, for those of you listening, Uzette has her own YouTube channel, and she does awesome product reviews and other stuff. Anything else that you want to shamelessly promote? And I won't play the shame ding ding.
I'm putting most of my force into doing nonprofit things. Good. And that's I left Alice in 2020 in February, and ever since then been doing some segments for Coffee TV 20, and most of them have been charitable organizations that fills my heart. So that's kind of what I've been doing since then. And then I do this radio show. It's called hofmradio.com. It's Hall of Fame music radio. A lot of classic hits, a lot of just different music that and remember, 60s, 70s, 80s, and so much more. So I'm just looking to get back into Bay Area radio. But honestly, Xander, I know so many people. I know more people out of radio than I know in radio right now. That's how bad radio has been for the year. So hopefully things come back and everything rolls around again. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have to find some new stuff to do.
I guess so. Well, I have no doubt, Uzette, that you will find awesome things to do.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate talking to you today, and you've kept in touch with me, so that means a lot to me as well. And I don't know, maybe I needed this.
Well, yes, we'll see. And I appreciate that you answered my Facebook message and said, hey, do you want to be a guest? Because it really means a lot to me. So
thank you. My pleasure.
Right. Well,
okay. Well, we will talk soon, and I wish you so much success on your own.
Thank you.
And both you and I are going to have a wrap around again, another part of 2021.
We are. Something will come up. I appreciate it.
For sure.
All right. Thanks so much, Uzette.
Okay. Thank you, Xander.
Bye.